So this is just diluted ferric chloride. So it's just a very weak acid which just eats away, well not eat, it oxidizes and etches and eats away a bit if you leave it in there too long at the carbon steel. And then because that is stainless steel and nickel steel, that's not, or stainless steel and nickel, that's not affected by the acid. So when you dip it in, this will be unaffected, and then that area where the carbon steel is, it will go black. And then that is just water with bicarbon, stops the chemical reaction. Because if you're doing blades like this that are very thin, if you don't stop the chemical reaction, you could damage the blade or go a bit too far. So it's just sort of a fail-safe of making sure everything's stopped. So these aren't the final dips, so I don't really need to worry about wiping it down with acetone or anything too much. It's just getting the initial etch in. Yeah, that will sit there for 5 minutes, and we'll do that a couple more times. Really tempted with that. I'm going to see if it actually fits on. Ooh! Getting spoiled for choice here. I think? What do you think? What? No, I don't like that. Down to 2. Down to 1. There we go. That's the block. I think. I'm hoping this is... Oh, that is perfect. Yeah. So you can, if you feel that blade there, so you can actually feel a slight difference there, whereas with this, if you run it, you can't feel it because we'll actually etch away. So we're essentially just eroding away a bit of the carbon steel, but only a tiny amount, so it will leave the nickel and the stainless steel, leave it a tiny bit higher, leaving a little bit proud, which is what I was saying earlier about it leaves you with that nice texture. These are my full-tang handles, and the design, although it was a happy mistake, I'm going to be 100% honest, it was a happy mistake that sort of snowballed one day. I one time had too much of a pin, the pin was too sunken in, so I had to grind out material on both sides, and I thought, oh, that's really good for a thumb position, and I'd be trying to think of an ergonomic grip where I could marry the two styles of the hidden-tang knife, where you have the elegance and the nice weight reduction. One of my favourite things about using them is the pinch grip that you can get. You can get that sort of really good control, and it almost feels like an extension of your arm. So when I started making knives, I wanted to really explore that and sort of emphasize that in my knives, which is how I came up with this design, where it sort of has the traditional look and like bulkiness of a full-tang / Western style knife, but I feel it really has that ergonomic sort of gentleness to it that you get with the more Japanese knives. And I also like to focus on it quite a bit because it's also, it can be held quite versatilely? It's quite versatile to hold because you can, so it's got the way which everyone, it's just the standard way to hold it. So it's got these little grooves made out here, so you can see it's completely symmetrical on each side, and it has a groove here for your 3 fingers, and then a groove here for both of your thumb and index finger. And the theory / thought process behind this was I wanted to recreate that really comfortable pinch grip that you get from, and that extra control that you get from holding these Japanese knives, but I wanted to recreate that with a full-tang, so you get that nice pinch there, but then you can also, in all my traditional shapes, and most of them, you can see they have these cutouts here, which is designed for comfort, so you're not sort of bashing your hand, but then also designed so you can go from the trigger grip there, which wrap your back finger around there, and there you have sort of crazy control. You can do whatever you like, and then if you want more control, you just shift it up there, get a nice pinch grip, and yeah, it's just nice and versatile, I find. And so it's got the nice balance of that you would usually get with a hidden-tang knife, but with a full-tang. And I just really enjoy trying to marry the two. Well, the benefits that I find, my favourite thing is from a hidden-tang and then mesh it into a full-tang, and then I came up with this handle, which I really like. Yeah, so now we're going to be doing the rough shaping of the handle, which is where you get the sort of prominent design that I do in. So going to start first of all by taking it down to where the metal is, so just removing this excess handle material. Once we get to that point, we will grind in the shape, so start by the 2 thumb grooves, but once we get to that, I'll talk you through it again. It sort of hits a spot with me when professional chef buys it, because I know that they're putting all of their faith into a tool that I'm making, and then they're gonna have to rely on that day in, day out. It's gonna have to hold a really nice edge, it's gonna have to be robust, it's gonna have to be sturdy, the handle's not gonna have to come off. I've described before as like the ultimate compliment of professional chef buying one of my tools, because that is putting your job onto. So it's really, so that's who I originally and still do design my knives for, is for the professional chef and the professional kitchen. So I make them up to that standard of being able to sort of bash them about a bit and toss them up. Yeah, the really thick ones, and like Clark do them, and yeah, they're just like the generic. So I started off, actually no, I didn't even start off with that. I started off with an angle grinder, that bench there that was already there, and a clamp, and then that's just what I went with. I then heat treated them in that barbecue with a hairdryer and just dip. I think I used like a tray of oil, like a baking tray, and I just filled that with oil and then just got it out of there and chucked it in there. Didn't know anything about warping or anything, but it hardened it. As inaccessible as it seems, it's really a lot more, because I suppose these videos that you watch, people have big workshops, especially like even somewhere like this started out as a garage with loads of bikes everywhere. You make one knife, and if after sort of 12 to 14 hours you don't like it, you sort of figure it out for yourself after that. But yeah, I get that question quite a bit of asking people like, oh, they don't know how to get into it, or they'd like to get into it but they don't have the tools. But you really don't, you just more need an interest than anything. You can just start out with just one of these files and a bit of metal, and then you can go from there. You can pay people to heat treat it, you can yeah, it's not too difficult to get into. So if you have the interest and it's really there, then. So now we've got the rough shaping of it done. I'm yet to get in there and clean up the lines, but we'll do that on the small wheel attachment. At the moment, you just got the rough shape. So now we're going to go clean it out with a small wheel, make sure everything's flush, all the metal's brought to the surface, there's no glue, and then after that we'll progress through the belts. About 320 on there. Right, so now we will go back onto this main arm and we'll do the bulk of the shaping. So this is where we get the rough shape that I was showing you earlier of the handles. So yeah, we'll do this in 80 grit and then smooth it out with 240 and then move on to the hand sanding. So on the shaping, we start off with 80 grit belt. Used to do it on 36, but it just absolutely rips into them. Actually, no, I'm lying. We need to get the top and the butt of the knife up to a nice 400 grit finish, so then we can focus mainly on the shaping. That's the way to do it. Right, so that is that all done. Yeah, just got a nice even finish over there on the 400 grit, and that's just getting everything looking nice and flush, all the lines smooth. And now we'll move on to the flat platen and just get the initial definitive shaping in. So I would say I went a completely wrong way because I bought that stupid woodworking belt sander, but then I'm sure you can relate to this as well. One of the most important things is abrasives. If you go to ground flat stock, which are the best, shout out ground flat stock, you can get 1 by, what are they, 1 by 30? Yeah, they're tiny, but you can get actual high quality abrasive belts for those small little belt grinders, the 1 by 30. I'm sure you could get one for like as little as like 30 quid on eBay if you, I mean brand new they're like £110 I think. You can get ones with nice little disc grinder attachment, disc sander attachment, but I'm sure you could find a second-hand one. I set myself up for making knives whilst I was roofing and earning like £200 a week. You really don't need much money if you get into it, but that is, yeah, that's one thing I'd say is get yourself a grinder that can handle decent abrasives, because at the end of the day you can get the fancy swanky grinders. Mine didn't, mine was about £800, which seems like a lot of money, but once you sell knives and stuff and it gets, you get to that point, and it's also really fun to work to. You have these different milestones. Or a grinder that can house decent abrasive belts, I would say is the #1 thing. I'd say with your first one, just make it however you can, because it doesn't need to be a good knife at all. It just needs to be for you. If you discover that you like making the knives in that way, it doesn't matter if it's crap and it doesn't work. You then know that you like making knives and you can just go from there. Like my first knife, about 3 months after I made it, I took it apart. I couldn't bear to see it. It was that initial time on finishing work and then coming here in the cold. Yeah, I'd say that's the easiest thing, is just, if you're thinking about it, try making one, because you could get into it and find out that you love it and found a new passion. Or if not, you've wasted like 50 quid and 12 hours. And yeah, you have a really good judgment of if you're gonna like it after that first time of making one. Now I've done the bulk of the shaping, so you've got the thumb and finger grooves there and the backhand grooves there. I don't focus too much on getting it perfect at this point, because you still got to go 240 grit, and then everything is refined and blended in by hand. You essentially just want those to be nice and even, make sure they look good on both sides, because some people may not notice, but you can have knives where, say, that loop is going all the way up there and then you flip it around and the loop is all the way down there. Each side looks good, but it's just, yeah, to have that nice symmetry. So you can see there, the shape's sort of starting to come together. Now we will just take these corners off to soften it down. So even though it's got these funky shapes, I still aim to have one main edge there, a main edge here, a main edge on the bottom, main edge on the top, and a main edge there. That's still taking inspiration from the Japanese style knives and the hidden-tang, where they have the octagonal shape, so it can sort of fit versatile in your hand. 40 grit belt on, and just go over these again just to get the deep scratches out from the 80 grit. It will just smooth everything, and you can do some final extra tweaks just to make sure everything is as symmetrical as you can get it by hand and by eye. Now we've got the initial shape of the handle, and you can see what I mean there at the end with the octagonal. Even though it's got the grooves and stuff in, it's still got that fundamental octagonal shape. But now, yeah, I'll move on to the 240 grit just to, yeah, get out all the deep scratches, just go over all the grooves that I've made, make sure everything's still nice and symmetrical, all the lines are even, so you don't have one side bigger than the other. Yeah. So that is the rough shaping done. It's pretty nerve-wracking at times, just because sometimes you get to a point where you've accidentally removed too much material, and it's just a battle trying to keep it in the lines. But this one's worked out pretty well, so we will go on to hand sanding now. I just take some 400 grit and just smooth out the lines. I try not to just sort of go in and I try not to go so heavy on it, because that would just ruin all the work that I've just done on the belt grinder. Taking it one face at a time, so I'll treat this face individually, I'll treat that face as an individual face. All done and polished. But yeah, it's got some really beautiful colours to it. Nice bit of resin in there. Now etch it, and then just on for the sharpening.
I hope you're enjoying the video so far, and if you are, then you need to know about our sponsors who made this video possible. We have multi-tool products who do the 84 engineering belt grinders, Clark Knives, who are a 3-generation family-run business who offer stock removal Damascus billets, but also offer professional heat treatment service for all types of knives. And GFS Knife Supplies. They are a one-stop shop for all your knife making consumables. GFS is a small family-run business and some of the quickest deliveries for your knife making needs, including but not limited to handle material, wood G10 liners and pins, the rock blade heat kilns, quenching oil for hardening knives, abrasive belts that can cut through hardened steel, and of course the steel stock that you use for making knives. Have a look at the brand new things that these guys have to offer by clicking the links in the description, and at the same time it's a little thank you to them for sponsoring this video. Back to Alfie and enjoy the rest of the video.
So yeah, the final step I do for my knives, I like to sharpen them all by hand. Especially when you're making a lot of knives, it's easy to just make them, chuck them into the post and they're out the door. So I like to have one final goodbye and just touch, see how the balance is, see if there's something you'd like to change in the next knife. Start on a Sharpening 1000 grit and then finish on a mystery sort of 4000 to 6000. I'm not sure what it is. I got it from Ground Flat Stock, shout out Ground Flat Stock. Gives it a nice final polish, and gets it, yeah, ready for chopping. I'm sure there's something very therapeutic I find about using all these power tools to make the knife, and then you just finish it by hand, and how they've been doing it for forever, which I really enjoy that. So yeah, that's it. That's how I make a bottlenose knife. Thanks for joining along the process.